you know, the title for this is interesting, and hopefully you guys are, we're getting a little feedback, aren't we? Hopefully you guys are able to kind of enjoy what we're going to talk about, because we're going to talk about some experiences, but we're also going to give you some relative tools that you can use to get through doing project-based or active learning or self-organized learning. And so let's go ahead and just kind of jump into this. So the question that we started talking about at actually Canvas 2 years ago, a couple instructors from Lower Columbia College, was, can students teach a college level course on their own, never having taken the course, and can they teach it in Canvas on their own without knowing how to use Canvas other than students? So you can imagine what those problems would be. And just think in your mind, what if you were to take any of the courses that you teach? How many of you are higher ed, by the way? Any K through 12 people in here? All right, good. I was hoping you guys would show up. You can imagine what it's like turning your classroom over to your students. And especially if they're in there for the first time and they've never taken the course. What kind of problems would that present for you? And you can throw those out later if you don't get those questions answered in a little bit. But let me ask you this. Is the question at all misleading in any way? Can students teach a college level course? Those of you who are college instructors, could they teach your course? Could you let students walk in and teach on day 2? How many say no? Show of hands. How many say yes? Oh, so there are some yeses, about as many yeses as no's. How many have no clue? All right, so we're going to crank through the next 7 slides or so, because we're going to give you a little bit of background on project-based learning and self-organized learning environments. So obviously the Andragogy and the Pedagogy both talk about project-based learning, active learning, self-organized learning. We're going to explain self-organized learning because that's the one we're going to focus on. Project-based learning, obviously, some of you have done this, works around a central project. It could be a capstone, something like that. Active learning, the students are actively doing project-based learning within the class, and those may be short projects, those may be longer projects. And one of the important things about this is that, you know, one of the things I think that happens to us as we go through education, unfortunately, in the United States, is our creative intellect has been taken away from us because we're trying to work through all of the content that we need to get through in order to prepare for college and then go on and get a job. And so creativity kind of gets pushed to the side. And with that creativity that gets pushed to the side, so does natural inquiry. So really what we want students to do, especially through standardized testing and standardized learning and all of those kinds of things, is learn this content and not necessarily ask really tough questions or explore very much, because we have a set amount of content, especially in a college classroom, to get through in a short amount of time. So 3 years ago or so, I ran into this gentleman on TED Talks, Shugata Mitra, and we're going to play 3 minutes of his TED Talk. And this is very crucial. He talks about self-organized learning, but he gives it some context.
What is going to be the future of learning? I do have a plan, but in order for me to tell you what the plan is, I need to tell you a little story which kind of sets the stage. I tried to look at where did the kind of learning we do in schools, where did it come from? And you can look far back into the past, but if you look at present day schooling the way it is, it's quite easy to figure out where it came from. It came from about 300 years ago. and it came from the last and the biggest of the empires on this planet. Imagine trying to run the show, trying to run the entire planet without computers, without telephones, with data handwritten on pieces of paper and traveling by ships. But the Victorians actually did it. What they did was amazing. They created a global computer made up of people. It's still with us today. It's called the bureaucratic administrative machine. In order to have that machine running, you need lots and lots of people. They made another machine to produce those people, the school. The schools would produce the people who would then become parts of the bureaucratic administrative machine. They must be identical to each other. They must know three things. They must have good handwriting, because the data is handwritten. They must be able to read, and they must be able to do multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction in their head. They must be so identical that you could pick one up from New Zealand and ship them to Canada, and he would be instantly functional. The Victorians were great engineers. They engineered a system that was so robust that is still with us today, continuously producing identical people for a machine that no longer exists. The empire's gone. So what are we doing with that design that produces these identical people? And what are we going to do next, if we ever are going to do anything else with it? So that's a pretty strong comment there. I said, schools as we know them now, they're obsolete. I'm not saying they're broken. It's quite fashionable to say that the education system's broken. It's not broken. It's wonderfully constructed. It's just that we don't need it anymore.
So 29 years ago, I got a bachelor's degree in science education, and my first job was at Portland Community College teaching printing and publishing. And when that technology went away because of digital communication, I taught in the K through 12 alternative school setting for 12 years. And then I started doing e-learning design, and now I teach business technology. And so my science degree did not truly prepare me for all of the different teaching careers that I've had over the past 29 years. So what I know about my students is that they're not going to be prepared, much as Mark Prensky was saying this morning, they're not going to be prepared if we're teaching them the same way we've been teaching students for the past 100 years or so, for their jobs in the next 20 or 30 years. So we looked at this whole process, and there are 5 components that we've worked out over the past 2 years that really work in a college setting. And this is also based on Sugata Mitra's 14 years of studying this. And if you look at this, he pioneered this in India, where not only were the students learning traditional courses, they also didn't know how to speak English, and they didn't know how to use a Windows computer, and they did all 3 in a very short period of time. So you should watch the rest of that TED video. So what's important here is that this whole process is about peer-to-peer instruction, about community facilitation, technology, limited amount of technology. Not every student has a computer. There's 4 students to 1 computer. Team-based teaching and learning, and a public-facing product. So all of the courses that we've done this in at Lower Columbia College over the past 2 years, 3 years now actually, have produced public-facing products in business technology, in English, and in biology. And so those are products where the students are creating something that a greater portion other than the college community is going to see. So the soul learning process is interesting. We've done it a variety of ways. We've done it with an entire class, which is fairly easy. If you have one class, one section, it's a great way to go. We've done it cross-sectionally. So typically when I do it, I have 2 sections of the same course that meet in the morning and the afternoon. The teams are cross-sectional. They're all producing one product as a large team. We've done it cross-quarterly, where students have worked from one quarter to another. We've also done it cross-disciplinary, and we actually had one team that was composed of English, biology, and business technology, 70 students across 3 different courses. Actually more than 100 students across 3 different courses. And then we're planning on doing it again cross-disciplinary between English, business technology, and then biology and business technology. So some key pieces that we do here are things like a team contract. And so let me show you what a team contract looks like really quickly. If I can find my cursor. There we go. So this is an example of a team contract. And when the students do this, they fill it out individually. And then they fill it out as a team. So you can see they do different colored information here. They create a set of ground rules. This comes out of what the University of Phoenix has been pioneering for a great deal of time with their team stuff. And so each student's putting in their own comments in separate colors, and they talk about how that's going to work. And it's important that they have that team contract, because when they run into problems, the instructor is not going to solve those problems for them. They are not going to change up the team. They are not going to do anything. It is on the team. And whether the team is 4 people or 60 people, it's on the team.
So Mark just pulled this up in Google Docs, and that's how we do the team contracts too, so that we can do this. Lucas teaches the biology class, and he teaches it entirely online. And so he has his online students filling out contracts in the Google Docs. Mark mentioned about doing like cross sections. I had 2 sections of the English class when I did it in the winter quarter this past year, but I didn't have them working together. I had teams just in each of the classes, but still had them working on the Google Docs on their technology. I'm going to be doing it again in the fall as a hybrid, so I'm looking forward to that and having that technology piece in there that's going to be more important to them, not having as much classroom time.
So after they do it as individuals, they go ahead and they summarize it in a team language. And so you can see here the team language that they use to do that. And it's important that they get that team essence going on, right? Because they have to function as a team. And the other piece, when we do these projects, these sole projects, and they're giving us a product, their final grade for the course is dependent upon that product being successfully delivered. So if they don't deliver that product, everybody in the course fails. Everybody. And I've done this for 3 years now, and that is the standard. And I give them the choice. They can do the class the regular way. I can lecture ad infinitum. Or they can actually do the class as the team project. And they know that if they don't deliver that project on time, everybody in there fails. So it's important that those teams have face-to-face time. I'll give you a little preview. We're going to show you how to do this in Canvas. It's important that they have face-to-face time. It's important that they do peer evaluations. And it's important, ultimately, that they have their own Canvas community. Because, I want you to think about this, they have to be both teacher and student. If they're in a Canvas course as a student, they can't grade assignments, nor can they create assignments. If they're in as a TA, they can't do the assignments as a student. This was the first major problem that we ran into with the courses. How do we get them in Canvas to be able to create assignments and grade each other's assignments? Because in order to get this project done, you have to do it in chunks, right? You've done projects before yourself. You have to do it in chunks. And so we've got to make that possible. And so we went ahead and created a separate Canvas community for each course. And so here you can see the 2 different courses. So the one that I teach is on the bottom. We've got Word Processing 2 course. So this is the course that the students come into. And the public-facing product that they create is a cookbook. And so we create a separate community for them, and we import them into that community so they have their own Canvas space. And we'll talk about how we put them in both as teachers and as students in a minute. And then you want to talk about yours for a second?
So I teach all levels of English composition, and the class that I've been doing this project with is English 102, which focuses on research and argumentative writing. And so we created, and the theme that I was doing for my class was vampires. And so we didn't talk about our big questions.
Oh, didn't we?
No,
We'll come back
didn't.
to it,
Okay.
yes.
So, well, I'm just going to throw it out there right now. So I asked my students, I taught a vampire-themed 102 before, and all they talked about was Twilight, and I'm like, you have got to be kidding me, right? Like, vampires are so much more than this Twilight crap. Like, vampires don't glitter. And so, so I decided that they needed more of a context and a background on it, and I didn't want to give it to them. Like, I'm not teaching a vampire class, I'm teaching a research class. And so that's how Mark wooed me into, into doing this Soul project, was I gave them this question about, like, you know, how has the vampire mythology changed, and what does it say about us as a society? And it was that really important, I thought, psychological element behind it that would give them the opportunities to really explore and dig in deeply. And so, so they had to do a research journal that was themed around these ideas about the vampire mythology and the changes and the societal attitudes and how all of those things are really important in our society. And so Mark helped me create this vampire journal shell.
And the important thing here, and Nicole mentioned it a second ago, is that with Soul, you're asking the students a big question. And you have to design the big question perfectly, because the big question drives the whole thing. If you make it too narrow, the students will get down into the weeds and they won't get anywhere. If you make it too broad, they'll flail around. And so this is where this idea of conversion time comes in, and we'll talk a little bit more of that in a second. But your big question for the Vampire Journal was?
Oh, well, I just said it.
Did you say it?
I did.
In the question form?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, how has vampire mythology changed? I had said in the last 15 years, because that's when Twilight came out. And then what does it say about us as a society?
And so that's what the students go into.
Right.
That's what they're focused on. In my class, I asked them, you know, they have to do a procedure manual. It's word processing. So I could come up with all kinds of procedure manuals for them to do. But a cookbook, in essence, is a procedure manual. And most of the population that goes into business administration likes the idea of a cookbook. So I said, well, can you create an excellent looking cookbook that creates community, not only on the college, but within the local community? And can you make it an excellent looking product that would sell? Okay? And so that's the big question and of course they all go, yes, we can do that. Right? Did your students say yes as well? We can do that, we can write these things?
Well, we were going to talk about the resistance factor.
Well, and that's it. So there is some resistance. And this happens in a Soul environment no matter what, and you need to be prepared for this. In an 11-week course, we found that there were 3 weeks worth of resistance to, wait a second, I just want to know how to do this. I didn't take this kind of class. I want to be in here learning word processing.
Right, and you know, my students are like, what do you mean? How am I supposed to research? I don't know what to do. And the vampire stuff, I don't know anything about vampires, nor do I care.
Yeah. So it takes them a while to even get the idea that they can create assignments, to be able to grade each other, to be able to learn Canvas, because we don't teach them Canvas. They only know it as a student. We don't teach them how to be a teacher. So there's some duality of learning going on. And you know, one of the things, this Chinese symbol here talks about pair. And we put them in 2 different roles. We put them in as a student, obviously, in their Canvas community, and we put them in as what we call a Soul reviewer. It's higher than a TA, and it's lower than a teacher. They can't kick anybody out of a course. They can't bring new people into a course.
They can't see each other's grades.
And they can't see other FERPA information. But they can create assignments, they can grade assignments, they can create discussions, they can do everything a teacher can do other than those few things that we haven't mentioned. And it's important that they take on both of those roles.
And so the secondary shell, the one that Mark had labeled as the cookbook and I have as the vampire journal, that's the shell that they're the sole reviewer in. That's the shell where they do the assignment creation, the assignment grading, and then we take that, those grades, that information, and then we put it back into our course shells where only we are teachers.
Mm-hmm. But in my course for the cookbook community, I'm only looking for the cookbook. So I have one assignment that correlates to all of the work that they're doing in their Canvas community.
I structured mine a little bit differently. So I broke it up with, they had to do, I gave them, well, don't you give them grades on the team contracts?
I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we give them grades on team contracts and peer evaluating. So like they do 3 sets of contracts. So, and then 3 sets of evaluations. So it's a 3-week chunk, a 3-week chunk, and then like a 4-week chunk. And so what are we going to do in this first 3 weeks? And then did we live up to what we promised each other we would do? So there's grades on that, and then I give them grades on the quality of the assignments that they wrote, because I have skills that I want them to be practicing.
Right. Oh,
And then the product.
Yeah, and that's where that duality of learning comes in. So on the other side, while the students in my class are creating this cookbook, they're also going through an online word processing program that's teaching them all of the word processing skills that they need. They actually produce 500 other documents along with the cookbook in this class. And that's business correspondence, mail merging, all of that kind of stuff. They're doing that, so that's also that duality piece. They're learning the basic skills, again on their own, or in Nicole's case, from her in a separate lecture, but then they're also doing the project base on the side.
Right. So on day one, when I introduced the soul, I told them I wouldn't throw them to the wolves in terms of, research and argument and stuff like that, that I would still give them instruction on those things. I didn't want them running off into the internet world and, learning bad habits. So I have a whole module of writing techniques and research techniques and information about argument. And so I open up a number of links each week and I give them a lecture and we talk about those things. And then they're supposed to go and design assignments that practice those skills that I'm lecturing them on.
Okay, I'm gonna get a cruise here.
And Lucas does the same thing. His class is on biology and he does cancer. And so he asks his students, can they design a cell that wouldn't
that become cancerous.
Yeah. And so they produce, so that's their big question. And then they go through and they research all of this stuff about cancer and learn, well, actually have to start with cell structure first, and then they move through and then they learn about cancer.
So this is what if you look at the user page in Canvas and you look at what importing the individuals into the Canvas space twice looks like, you import them in as a student, and then you import them in as, again, a sole reviewer. And next to their name in the user page that you get on Canvas, you will see they have both roles. And it's awesome in Canvas, and I pray that they never change it. They get to function in both roles. They get to function as a student, and they get to function basically as a teacher. Okay? And so now we've set up a system, thanks to our e-learning designer, Sarah, wave your hand, yes. Our e-learning director, actually, where we can now create these courses as we start developing more and more of them. And so we're actually seeing more instructors now jumping on board wanting to do this. And so now we have a process for bringing that together. And so this is an example of the staging process. So the great thing about Canvas, as you may remember, is it was designed by students for students. And so when we look at this, this is from the cook.
Class.
Oh, that's from your class.
That's my
yeah.
class.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah. So, so they were in small groups. They were in groups of 4 or 5 students. And so I had organized it. I had to go in and mess with it a little bit. But so the group's assignments are there. So the first 4 assignments are from the group called the Bloodsuckers. And then the next 4 are from the Impalers. And then I have, Bloodlust there. So each of those groups got together and collaboratively designed these assignments and then went ahead. And the assignments were things like So they had to do a source assignment. So I think they did something like, go out and find 5 sources and review them. Summary is a skill that I teach in argument writing. And so, find a academic article and write a summary of it. A wiki walk. So go to Wikipedia and follow all the links and, what do you learn? And write an assessment. How useful was that information?
So the interesting piece is, on the average in a Seoul community, the students create about 20 assignments in a 10-week period. The more amazing piece is that they grade those assignments within 48 hours. So, 20 students creating at least 20 assignments, or in some cases 60 students creating 20 assignments, all of those submissions, they grade all of those in 48 hours. I have trouble grading some of that in a week sometimes. So just be aware that it's kind of scary to watch them go through this process, because it in some ways makes you wonder why you're there.
Well, it's fun too to see them sending messages like, you haven't submitted yet. When are you going to turn in your assignment?
Yeah. So the results. Let's show you the results. So I've been doing this for 3 years now, and my students have been producing cookbooks for 3 years. The first cookbook was 5.5 by 8.5, and I didn't bring a sample, but it's half page, about 20 pages, 30 pages of samples, and we printed in-house. The second year they did a full 8.5 by 11. It had 60 recipes. This year we did it, and it had 70 recipes. It was 126 pages, and it's hardcover, and it's out being published now. So it was the first hardcover one, and it sells for $40. And it will sell through not only the campus bookstore, but we'll probably be selling it on Amazon.
So I have my students produce 2 products. And so I have them do the research journal. And I brought a couple of samples just to show you the amazing work that they did. So one group got this little leather binder, put these really cool symbols up on it. And they included all of their work. They printed all of their assignments out, and they put it in here as well. Another group here, and I said, do however you want. They had to write a 10 to 12 page research paper, each student, that went into the journal. And so this was the impalers. They got all creative with coffee. And then this was the piece de resistance, right? Look at this. Right? Look at this leather-bound journal. Every page is tea stained and burnt around the edges. A lot of time went into the decorative aspect of it, but it was really cool. There was a lot of time that went into the research aspect as well. So they have to do that, and then they also have to do a Prezi for each group. And in the Prezi, I asked them a variety of things they needed to do. So they had to collaboratively, and in the journal, they had to collaboratively write an introduction. So what are the things that you found in common in the papers that you wrote? If anybody's familiar with Utne Reader, they always, every issue has 4 articles that focus on the same topic. And so that was kind of what I modeled it after. And I showed them that. But then in the Prezi, they had to talk about what was their experience with the Soul project, how did collaborative learning work for them. They have to do a little summary of each person's findings, and this was the best. It's the same group that did this one, but this is incredible. Some of the stuff they did, and comparing the older vampires to modern vampires, and what do those things say about the time period that they appeared in, and what do some of the shifts in the mythology say about the people, right? So if you're looking at Eastern European legends, what does that say about the feelings of Eastern Europeans towards maybe the West, or different things like that.
So, and then Lucas's presentation, and I may not have time to bring it up, but they created a website, and they created videos all on cancer, and their website is over 50 pages. And that was a group of 4 students creating a 50-page interactive website that went through cell processes, that went through cancer, how cancer develops, why cancer develops, went through, you know, what stages they might be able to intervene and prevent cancer from developing. And so he had a great piece there. But since we're running out of time, I'm going to kind of move us along. If I can find my cursor again.
Official site.
Oh yes, the official slide deck piece, right. Okay, and prevent review. Oh, again. Thank you. And cursor. So, hurdles. So there are obviously a lot of hurdles, you know. Passive learning. Students, as you may be aware, because you deal with this all the time, they just want to be fed the information. What do I need to know to pass the class? Tell me what I need to know, I'll do it, and I'll get it done. How do we make sure that they have skill mastery for the career that I'm teaching, or the college level writing that Nicole is preparing them for, or the college level biology that Lucas is preparing them for? How do we assess the product and the work that they did? We had this discussion today, actually, about, you know, competencies and objectives and outcomes. And really, when we talk about objectives, we're looking at grading the individual from a product that a team is producing. And it's like Mark was saying this morning, Google wants people who get things done. My administrative assistants have to be problem solvers. They don't just type documents anymore. They have to run the office. And they have to solve problems daily. Lucas's people, if they go into medicine, they have to figure out problems on their own, but they have to work with a team. So how do we assess the individual in that team process? Filtering content. How do we teach them how to effectively filter when we don't do any teaching? We literally stand back, and the process there is we're facilitators. They come to us with a question, how do we do this? We say, that's a good question. How would you do that? And that's pretty much all the input that we have. They hate that. They spend 3 weeks trying to get us to answer questions, and then they figure out that we're not going to give them answers, and they start going after it on themselves, for themselves. So it's not a new process. It's what we were doing when we were in kindergarten. We've just forgotten how to do it. And that's why if we want to create people who can get things done, if we want to build people who can build a better world, as Mark was saying this morning, you know, we have to actually kind of buck the system a little bit and look at how do we bring this in. And this year when I did it, I get pushback every year when I do this, but I got a lot of pushback this year. The students not only in creating the cookbook have to create a cookbook, they have to raise the money to do it. It costs almost $2,000 to produce enough copies of that cookbook. So on top of producing the cookbook, they have to raise the money. Well, this year I was told that students can't raise the money in a classroom setting. So I told the students, sorry, you can't raise money in a classroom setting. So what did they do? They created their own club. And then they raised money. And they raised $1,600 worth of money, which was enough because they figured out some ways to get around the cost of printing to actually print 60 copies and have enough copies for each of them and sell 30 copies and sustain it and put money into an ongoing scholarship for new business technology students. Things that they wouldn't have done in a 10-week word processing 2 class. And they did it on their own, and they felt awesome about it. And I think this is the thing. You're going to have people who say, this is hard to do. I want to make sure that they're learning how to do these things because that's what's expected of them. And so, you know, your administration, your colleagues, the students, they want to stick to that Carnegie model of seat time. In Washington State, the SBCTC, the people who run the colleges in Washington State, have said the best thing for the colleges in Washington State would be to step away from the seat time model. And yet, you try this model, I guarantee you will get some resistance right now.
I'd like to add too that, so the papers that they wrote for these journals were really good, but beyond that, I taught a 15-credit class in the spring quarter with a political science instructor and a psychology instructor, and took my approach to the English instruction in the same way. I gave them the links. I did very minimal amount of talking about those skills and things. And the poli-sci guy, he's super traditional instructor, and he said at the end of the quarter, those are the best research papers I've ever read in my 30-year teaching career.
So Socrates, I think, the Socratic model actually is a great model for this. Questions? Go ahead.
I thought the whole point of doing a project is to make them get excited and passionate about something they want to do. And you guys said that they're like, I don't care about vampires.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that really call their passion if they don't really want to make a cookbook or do vampires? My second question is, who sets the rubrics?
Okay, so the first question is, where's the passion come from? How do they get passionate about these options that we've given them? And so in response to that, I give them that option about what do you want to do, do the regular coursework or do the cookbook, and their response is, well, we want to do a cookbook. And then they start brainstorming, well, how can we do this really cool cookbook? And for my population, the cookbook is a perfect ideal model because they typically will get passionate about it. Most people who go into business administration are single females who might be raising kids. They might be married in some cases, but they are looking to be the breadwinner in the household, and so they're also being mom and primary breadwinner. And so, doing the regular stuff, they're totally passionate about that, and sharing that stuff, they're all over it. What about your folks?
Oh, yeah, for mine, it was getting into the making of the product, especially the Prezi, because they were all like, what do you mean a Prezi? I want to do a PowerPoint. I'm like, no, I don't want you to do a PowerPoint. I want you to get away from this linear thinking and try to look at it in a non-linear way, right? And place this palette, and that's why I picked that Prezi. I thought they did the best job with it. And they got really passionate about creating assignments and then assessing those assignments and then making these journals and those Prezis. So by the end of the quarter, I didn't hear anything more about, who cares about vampires?
No, they loved teaching each other. They did. That's where the passion carried over. What was the second part of your question?
Who sets the rubrics?
So they set the rubrics. They actually design, we give them the objectives for the course. They design how they're going to meet those objectives, and they actually design the rubrics. So this is the first quarter when I've done this, the first time in 3 years, where I've given them basic rubric design, and then they started designing those themselves. You had a question back there with the sunglasses, I think. Somebody else had one? No? Another question? Go ahead.
Yeah, admin side. I'm an assistant admin.
Uh-huh.
How did you handle drop students? Did you have to manually do the enrollment for this?
We did, but I'll have you talk to Sarah about that afterwards. She can explain that. Back there, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So each group created so many assignments, and that group was the one that graded those assignments, and then after that, they just completed other people's assignments.
So that question was, the group created the assignments, and then that group graded those assignments. And in Nicole's course, that was the case. In my course, I just had one big group, but that was also the case, yeah. Yeah, each group is responsible for creating assignments and grading assignments. And I think we're
Right,
done.
and I didn't have crossover between the groups, although it's something I might consider in the future.
Yeah.
But I only did it the one time, so.
But if you have one big group, was each student grade 5, or?
It's on them. They figure it out, and they get it all done, by the way. Yeah, so. All right, we are done. If you have further questions, we'll be happy to answer them. Thank you so much for coming.